Rock bottom before anyone knew his name, before the interviews, before television lights, before anyone called him a businessman. Daymond John was just a kid growing up in Queens, New York, raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. Money wasn't tight. Money barely existed. From a young age, he learned something that never left him. If you wanted something, nobody was coming to hand it to you. There was no safety net in that household. No backup plan. No quiet savings account waiting in case life went wrong. School wasn't easy for him, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the system wasn't built for how his mind worked. He struggled with dyslexia, often feeling slower, misunderstood, and labeled as someone who wouldn't go far. Those labels stick to you when you're young. They crawl into your thinking. They sit quietly in your chest when you're alone. But something else grew alongside them. Hunger. Not just for food, for control, for dignity, for the ability to decide his own future. As a teenager, Daymond was already hustling, not because it was trendy, but because necessity doesn't ask for permission. He sold hats, he flipped products, he looked for small gaps where effort could turn into cash. Not dreams, cash. After high school, college wasn't an option. There was no tuition money, no guidance counselor with a roadmap. Instead, he took a job at Red Lobster, washing dishes, waiting tables, grinding through long shifts while watching others talk about careers they hadn't earned yet. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't inspiring, but it paid something. And when you grow up with nothing, something matters. Then came the moment that quietly changed everything. Hip-hop was exploding, not just as music, but as identity. Artists were shaping culture faster than corporations could understand it. The clothes, the language, the posture, it all meant something. But Daymond noticed a disconnect. The people creating the culture didn't own it. They were wearing brands that didn't represent them, designed by people who didn't live their reality. That thought wouldn't leave him alone. What if the streets had their own brand? What if the people inside the culture controlled the profits? He didn't think of it as an empire. He didn't think of it as fashion. He thought of it as fairness. That idea followed him home every night. It sat with him in his bedroom. It echoed while he folded clothes and counted tips. Eventually, it got too loud to ignore. Daymond made a decision that looked reckless to everyone else. He quit Red Lobster. No savings, no investors, no guarantees, just belief and fear living in the same body. He took over his mother's house, turning it into a factory. The living room became a workspace. The sewing machines ran day and night. His mother didn't just allow it. She signed papers that put the house at risk. If he failed, they lost everything. That's what real pressure feels like. Not motivational quotes, not social media applause. Real pressure is knowing your mistakes will hurt the people who believed in you. That was the birth of FUBU, not in a boardroom, not with funding, but inside a home where failure had consequences. And at that moment, Daymond wasn't chasing success. He was trying not to fall through the floor. At the beginning, nothing felt like momentum. FUBU didn't launch, it crawled. Daymond would load bags of shirts into his car and drive around New York, knocking on doors that didn't care who he was. Small shops, street vendors, anyone willing to listen for 30 seconds. Most weren't. They looked at him the way people look at risk, politely dismissive, quietly skeptical. Some said the designs were too loud, others said the prices were impossible. A few laughed and told him to come back when he was a real company. He went back anyway. Sales happened slowly, inconsistently, almost randomly. One day he'd sell out. The next, nothing would move. There was no pattern he could rely on, no formula that promised tomorrow would be better. What he did have was exhaustion. Long nights cutting fabric, early mornings delivering orders, endless calculations in his head about which bill could wait and which one couldn't. His friends were living different lives. Some had stable jobs, some were partying, some were already talking about retirement plans. Daymond was calculating thread costs. That's when reality hit harder. Production was eating him alive. Small batches meant high costs. Every shirt carried stress in its seams. If one order went wrong, it didn't hurt profits, it threatened survival. He realized he wasn't running a fashion brand. He was fighting logistics with no armor. There were moments he considered stopping, not dramatically, quietly, rationally, telling himself this was a good attempt, Not a lifetime sentence, but something always pulled him back. Every time he saw someone wearing FUBU in the street, something inside him tightened. Not pride, responsibility. If strangers believed enough to wear it, he had no right to quit yet. Then something unexpected happened. Hip-hop artists started noticing, not because of marketing, because FUBU looked like the culture they lived in. Daymond didn't chase celebrities. He didn't pitch endorsements. He simply made clothes that felt honest. Artists wore them because they wanted to, not because they were paid. And when those artists stepped onto stages, onto screens, into magazines, FUBU went with them. Sales didn't explode, but they changed shape. Orders became bigger, requests more specific, deadlines tighter, pressure doubled. Success, he learned, doesn't reduce stress. It replaces one kind with another. Now the fear wasn't invisibility, it was collapse under weight he wasn't ready to carry. He needed capital, real capital, not favors, not family loans, not borrowed time. So he did what people are told to do. He went to banks, and he was rejected immediately. No credit history, no assets under his name, no formal business education. To them, he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was a risk with a logo. Every rejection chipped at him. Not his confidence in the brand, but his belief that the system had room for someone like him. Still, quitting never fully entered the room, because going back to nothing felt heavier than pushing forward with uncertainty. He kept going, not because he was fearless, because fear had already moved in, and he learned to live with it. Visibility is a strange thing. You think you want it, you chase it, you imagine it as proof that you're finally doing something right. But when it arrives too early, without structure, it can destroy you. That's what started happening to Daymond. FUBU was everywhere that mattered culturally. Music videos, live performances, album covers. People recognized the logo before they knew the story. Orders started flooding in. Not hundreds, thousands. And that's when the cracks appeared. Because attention doesn't come with instructions. Manufacturers demanded minimums he couldn't afford. Suppliers raised prices. Deadlines became non-negotiable. What used to be hustle turned into chaos. Daymond spent his days on the phone, negotiating like his life depended on it, because it did. Nights were filled with numbers that never quite added up. Every yes came with 10 new problems. He borrowed where he shouldn't have, promised deliveries he wasn't sure he could make, agreed to terms that kept him awake at night. This wasn't growth, it was survival under spotlight. His mother watched it happen quietly. The house was still on the line. If one shipment failed, if one retailer backed out, the bank wouldn't care about culture or dreams. They would take the house. That pressure changes how you think. It sharpens some people. It breaks others. Daymond stopped thinking like a designer. He started thinking like a chess player. Every move had to protect the king. He learned to say no, not to opportunity, but to distraction. He cut designs that didn't sell, dropped ideas he loved but couldn't afford, focused only on what moved fast and paid reliably. Ego was expensive. He couldn't afford it. Then came the biggest wake-up call. A massive order landed on his desk, the kind that could change everything, or end it. To fulfill it, he'd have to spend money he didn't have, commit to timelines he couldn't control, and trust partners who didn't know him. Accepting meant betting everything. Declining meant staying small forever. That night, he didn't sleep. Not because he was excited, because he understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't about talent anymore. It was about nerve. The ability to stand still while your insides are screaming. The courage to make a decision when both outcomes scare you. Daymond said yes. And the moment he did, the clock started ticking. The order was real. The money was not. To make it work, Daymond needed manufacturing power he didn't control and cash flow that didn't exist. There was no clever workaround, no shortcut hidden in a spreadsheet. Only one option remained. He went back to the bank, not with hope, with urgency. This time, he didn't talk about fashion. He didn't sell a vision. He showed demand, purchase orders, signed commitments, proof that the market already decided. The bank listened, not warmly, not kindly, but they listened. Then came the condition: collateral, not inventory, not future earnings. The house, his mother's house, the same place where FUBU was born, the same roof that sheltered the risk from day one. Signing those papers felt heavier than quitting ever could have. If he failed now, he wouldn't just disappoint himself. He would erase his family's safety. His mother didn't hesitate. She trusted him in a way only parents do, without guarantees, without control, without certainty. That trust stayed with him. Every hour, every decision, every breath. The money came through. Production began, and immediately everything went wrong. Delays, quality issues, missed shipments. Retailers threatened to cancel. Manufacturers blamed supply chains. Everyone had excuses. Daymond absorbed it all. There was no one else to blame. He learned something brutal during that period. When you borrow at the edge, mistakes are louder. You don't get learning curves, you get consequences. He lived on airplanes, phones glued to his ear, negotiating fixes one crisis at a time. Some nights he didn't go home, wherever exhaustion caught him. Then, slowly, things stabilized. Shipments went out, payments came in. The house stayed standing. But he wasn't celebrating. He was older now. Not in years, in weight. Because success that nearly costs everything doesn't feel like victory. It feels like survival with memory. And that memory changes you. FUBU was no longer just a brand trying to break through. It was a business that had survived its first real test, and the world was starting to notice. By the late 1990s, something had shifted. FUBU was no longer knocking on doors. Doors were opening, not wide, but enough to step through. Retailers who once ignored Daymond were now calling. Media outlets wanted interviews. Buyers asked questions they never cared to ask before. The logo had become recognizable. But recognition is a double-edged thing. People began copying. Designs looked familiar. Messages felt borrowed. Brands with money entered the space FUBU helped define. Competition arrived, dressed as validation. Daymond didn't panic. He understood something instinctively. You can copy fabric. You can't copy belonging. FUBU wasn't selling clothes. It was selling identity. And identity doesn't come from factories. It comes from lived experience. That understanding shaped every decision. He stayed close to the streets, listened more than he spoke. Let the culture guide the product, not the other way around. Then came the moment that changed everything. A major apparel deal was offered. Big money, mass distribution, global exposure, but also conditions. Creative control would be diluted. Decision-making would slow. The brand's voice would be filtered. It was the kind of offer that ends most stories. Security over struggle. But Daymond hesitated. Not because he didn't want success, because he understood cost. He had already risked the house, now he was being asked to risk the soul. He walked away. That decision shocked people around him. They called it stubborn, naive, arrogant. But Daymond knew something they didn't. Once you sell your voice, you don't get it back. That refusal kept FUBU independent but vulnerable. Growth slowed, pressure returned, and then opportunity arrived from an unexpected place. Samsung, not a fashion company, a technology giant. They weren't looking for clothing advice. They wanted credibility. They wanted access to culture. Daymond didn't pitch products, he pitched relevance. FUBU would appear in Samsung's advertising. In exchange, Samsung would fund manufacturing. No equity loss, no creative compromise, just alignment. It was risky, unconventional, but it made sense. The deal unlocked scale without surrender. Production expanded. Distribution exploded. FUBU entered malls, cities, countries it had never reached. Revenue climbed fast, then faster, hundreds of millions, then over $1 billion. Not overnight, but undeniably. Daymond had crossed the line most never reach, from surviving to building, from fighting to shaping, and yet the hunger didn't leave. Because once you've been poor, money doesn't erase memory, it sharpens awareness. Winning doesn't feel the way people imagine. There's no quiet moment where you sit back and finally relax. No clear signal that says, you're safe now. For Daymond, success came loud. Phones ringing nonstop. Meetings stacked back to back. Decisions that affected hundreds of employees, not just himself. FUBU had become a machine, and machines demand constant attention. The brand was everywhere. Department stores, billboards, international markets. Revenue crossed numbers he never allowed himself to dream about when he was washing dishes. But something else crept in: distance. The more the company grew, the further he felt from the streets that gave it life. Executives spoke in forecasts and projections. Consultants brought charts instead of intuition. Everyone had an opinion. Most of them had never lived the life the brand represented. Daymond felt the tension. Growth wanted polish. Culture wanted honesty. Balancing the two was exhausting. He made mistakes. trusted people too quickly, held on to others for too long, assumed momentum would cover misjudgment. It doesn't. Success magnifies flaws the same way it magnifies wins. There were lawsuits, internal conflicts, moments when the brand felt heavier than the man carrying it. And then his body started speaking. Exhaustion turned into illness, stress into pain he couldn't ignore. Doctors told him to slow down. But how do you slow down something that feeds families, employs communities, and carries expectations far bigger than you ever planned? That's when the realization hit. FUBU wasn't his identity. It was a chapter, an important one, a defining one, but not the whole story. Daymond stepped back, not because he failed, because he understood longevity. He shifted from operator to mentor, from builder to investor. He began sharing the lessons he learned the hard way about ownership, leverage, and thinking differently when you don't have the luxury of options. That path led him to new platforms, new voices, a new role, not as a man proving himself, but as one helping others avoid the scars he earned. FUBU didn't disappear. It became legacy. And legacy, when done right, doesn't cling. It teaches, then lets go. There's a lesson people miss when they look at Daymond John's story. They focus on the money, the billion-dollar numbers, the fame, but none of that explains how it happened. The real engine was poverty, not romantic poverty, not struggle makes you stronger poverty, the kind that removes options. When you grow up without money, you don't get to be lazy in your thinking. You don't get to follow trends late. You don't get to waste time chasing ego. You learn efficiency early. Daymond learned to ask different questions than most people. Not what do I want to build, but what already works. Not how do I look successful, but how do I stay alive another month? That mindset never left him, even after the deals, even after the numbers, even after the applause. Because once you've stood on the edge, comfort feels temporary. He learned that opportunity rarely looks like permission. It usually looks like risk wearing a thin disguise. He learned that culture moves faster than corporations, and the people closest to the ground see change before those in offices do. Most importantly, he learned this: ownership matters more than attention. Control matters more than growth. And saying no is often more powerful than saying yes. Daymond never pretended his path was elegant. It was messy, stressful, unforgiving, but it was honest. He didn't wait to be chosen. He didn't wait for credentials. He didn't wait for capital. He built with what he had, where he stood, while fear sat beside him. That's why his story isn't really about fashion. It's about leverage. When you have no money, your leverage becomes insight. When you have no access, your leverage becomes proximity. When you have no safety net, your leverage becomes clarity. And clarity, when sharpened by necessity, is dangerous in the best way. So if you're listening to this from a place where resources are thin and doubt is loud, understand something clearly. You are not behind. You are being trained, not gently, not kindly, but effectively. That's the part no one posts. That's the part that builds empires.